So first part of making this roof basket for my 1994 Jeep CJ. I wanted a roof basket for quite some time, and now it's finally become time to build it. So what I'm going to incorporate here is it's going to have a solar panel on it. There's going to be a beam for mounting an awning, and I will have some lights on top of it. And I bought some round lights that are gonna be fit on it in part 2. But the pictures you saw there in the beginning is as far as I get here in part 1. So I have a big LED bar which I was going to mount on this roof rack, or roof basket, but it's just too wide, so it's not gonna look very good. So I bought some round lights instead to kind of give it a more of a retro look. And it's also going to be I'm going to fit some wooden planks as a bottom in the basket, so that's also going to add to that retro look. So what I'm doing here right now is to draw the outer dimensions on the floor of my garage. And the dimensions are 1.1 meter times 1.7 meters in length. So that's going to be the final dimensions of it. So what I'm doing here is just first cutting up all the material for the lower frame of the basket. And these are, I'm going to make the corners chamfered. So there's going to be two 45 degrees corners in every corner of the basket instead of just 190 degrees. So I think that's going to give it a little more interesting look. So everything I cut here is 22.5 degrees to make two pieces that make a 45-degree corner. So I'm just cutting that up, and this is, as I said, for the lower deck. And when you're laying it out on the floor later on, you need to check and recheck everything, and that's where I think that drawing this up on the floor is the best way to get it as perfect as you really want it. So I'm just laying everything out, and later on I'm gonna tack everything together, and then I'll weld all the parts of this lower frame. And right about here I am having some problems with my welding machine. It's been acting up lately, and I've ordered some extra parts for it, or some replacement parts, but I haven't got it to work that good, so I am grinding all the welds down. This will probably be powder coated later on, so it's not gonna matter that much, but you know, you want welds that look decent anyways. And as I said, it's gone to warp, and if you pay attention here, you can see that the frame has actually warped just a little bit, and I didn't notice that here. So when I welded this center beam, I should have held it down to the floor better, and it would have been pretty much perfectly straight, but I didn't. So I'm correcting that later on here. And right here, I'm just taking off the, what do you call it, the roof rails, because my first plan was to mount this basket in the original roof rails, but as these were possible to take off pretty easily, I came up with this solution instead, and I think it looks better simply. And it's also maybe more secure. It sits better on the roof, mounting it in those 8 holes that are available when you've taken off the rails. So I mark out 4 holes and then drill holes in all 8 of these brackets. And then I mount them on the roof and weld everything in place, because if I was to do this on the shop floor, I would probably get it close to where the holes are gonna be when I put it up on the roof, but I would probably not get all the way there, so it's better to mount it on the car and then weld it in place. And here's that process where I clamp the frame on the mounts of the brackets, and I just weld it in place. And before doing that, I of course disconnect the negative terminal on the battery. And I'm not really sure you have to do this, but I've been taught to do it. Otherwise you could damage the ECU and electronics on the car. So I always do it anyways. It's just a safety precaution. So after doing that, I just tack everything together, and I just make sure that it can't move, and then I take off the rail or the basket and I finish welding it on the shop floor. So before connecting these cross beams, I fix up that little warp I had in it. Should also mention that the roof of that car is going to be repainted. If I was really worried about the paint job on that car, I wouldn't be standing on it and welding on it. But that is going to be redone. Probably I'll just raptor line all the roof, and that's probably coming up in a future video. But if you know, because of that, I can actually do a lot of the work on top of the car, and that helps. So after finishing up the lower deck or the lower frame of the basket, I go cut the material for the upper part. And the reason that I didn't cut all the material up from the beginning was that the way I work is often by making a drawing and then I change things as I go along. But I have a drawing for the basic idea of what I'm going to build. But it's it's very often that I change it during the process. And instead of standing there with a lot of material that's been cut up for the drawing, then maybe being useless because I want to change something, I just cut up the material I know that I need, and then I go cut the other material. So I'm laying this on top to get it as close to the lower deck as possible, and just clamping it down. And then what I do is I put the pillars under, and if I'm not mistaken, I think that the total height of the roof basket is about 15 centimeters, and that's roughly 6 inches, I think. So last part is to cut the remaining pillars, and to get it as close to the roof as possible, to again to get it as straight as possible and not warped. I mount it on the roof, and then I weld those pillars in place, at least tack them in place when it's on the roof. And this is about the time that my welding machine really decided to start making problems, so I didn't film all this process. But here's some footage of me finish welding it. And after grinding all those welds down, it is finished as far as we're gonna go in this part 1. So in part 2, I'm gonna put the wooden planks on as a kind of a floor on the basket, and I'm gonna put the lights on. We're gonna probably get it painted. We're gonna put the mounting points for the awning on, and I'm also gonna have some, shovel, high lift, some parts like that. So check in for part 2 to see the finished product.